Good morning, Husker fans, and we're back for another Saturday morning chat here with the Husker Big Red Crew. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. And yeah, we're back. We missed last weekend, but we're back. How's the weekend feeling for you so far, Danny?
The Bruins got smoked last night. The Celtics, if they want to actually play team basketball and play like they deserve to be in the playoffs, should win tonight, but who knows? So it's been a very stressful weekend, but other than that, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I saw they lost the game recently to the Cavs, right? That's who they're
Yeah,
playing.
it was embarrassing. It was absolutely embarrassing.
It was, I'm not going to say embarrassing, but it was not great the way that the Nebraska softball and baseball teams played last night. I mean, the softball team had the lead. I think they had like a 3-run lead or something. And I had the game on, was help making some dinner, because the wife is, feeding the child and stuff. And I heard the home run from the kitchen. And I just thought, man, like, why does this always happen? I really thought they were going to be in the Big Ten championship game. And they needed that win, actually. And then the baseball team blowing a lead in the ninth inning for the second day in a row. And now, like, going into this week, it seemed like they were going to be in the mix to maybe host a regional. Now it's like they're on the bubble just to make the tournament. So
people are already asking the question, should Will Bolt be fired again? So I don't know.
I know, man. Like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about a Big Ten. I was talking about a Big Ten championship going into this weekend because they only trailed Purdue by a game. And now, Illinois, I guess Illinois by a game, whoever it was. But now that doesn't seem like, that's going to happen. So I don't know. They need to do enough to make the tournament. And if not, it could be maybe the first tough decision for Troy Dannon. But there's been a lot of positives too this year. So I don't know. It's a tough call again.
I don't know. Maybe stick with Will Bolt for one more year because it's hard, I bet, as a new athletic director to judge the talent that you have without a full calendar year, under your belt, so to speak. But the baseball team has been floundering over these past couple weeks. So, I mean, who knows? And it's not the first time that we've seen something like this happen under Will Bolt, unfortunately.
Yeah, and just a lot over the past few years, just being a Nebraska fan, a lot of losses that we should not have had. I was even thinking about the Big Ten Women's Championship game, because they had that clip of Caitlin Clark, kind of talking about how they should have never lost to Nebraska. And I'm like, well, we should have beat you twice because we had you. And it was like a 7 or 9 point lead with like 2 minutes to go. And that just was because, like, I knew that Nebraska's women's team wasn't going to win the national championship, but if they could have won the Big Ten championship, the tournament championship over Caitlin Clark, like I would enjoy that for the rest of my life. And we were so close to it and didn't get it. And that's what that reminded me of when I saw her give that speech. It took me right back to the Big Ten championship game when she just was like, nope, I'm not losing today. So, I mean, respect to her for sure, but still that's like one loss, out of all the losses in the last year, that's one that really sticks in my craw, I have to say.
Can I just say, all the outrage over that is stupid. All the outrage over that is stupid. I don't care if you like Caitlin Clark, don't like Caitlin Clark. I mean, you're in the locker room. You're seeing the emotions after a game. I've said a lot worse about the teams that we played, and I'm the team manager. I was a team manager, so all the outrage over that is stupid. You're just using this as another excuse to hate her, and I don't know. I mean, I'm just lucky that I wasn't mic'd up when I was a team manager because I would get into it and I would say some crazy stuff. So to me, it's no big deal, and I just think it's funny all those people that are upset about it. I mean, as much as she's the enemy and stuff, she's a competitor and she shouldn't be happy with losing. So I don't know. It was just funny seeing the outrage about it.
It was it was seeing that. I didn't realize people were even that outraged about it. I just saw people sharing it and I didn't really get the outrage of it. But
people were like she shouldn't say that, like she's spoiled, blah, she whines too much. You're in the locker room. You're the locker room is a sacred place, as you know, and anything can be kind of said and goes in there. So I don't blame her one bit. But it's all the old people that are like blah blah blah, new generation, new athletes, blah blah blah, and all that stuff. So I noticed that trend too.
Yeah, that does get kind of annoying. But so before we get into our full chat here, guys, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you hit the like button. Get into the comment section and get into the comment section right now if you're following on any of the Husker Big Red or Big Red Banter social channels. It's great to see you guys and have the chat. Here's Mitch.
We're so close to 1,500 subscribers. I was just looking today, so that's pretty cool.
Especially the Badger volleyball girls locker room. Not sure exactly what you mean by that, but there must be some backstory there. At any rate, though, it is a big weekend for, Nebraska football recruiting. So we're definitely going to be talking
Yeah,
about that. I did want to talk about, the whole walk-on thing. I don't think we've touched on that. So I kind
no.
of put that in there at the top as maybe a talking point. We can talk about whatever else you guys want to talk about, though. But yeah, to me, starting off with this weekend's conversation, David Sanders coming here, Broderick Scholl. But David Sanders, that was big, and that came out of
Yep.
nowhere. I didn't even know if Nebraska was really in the mix that much. Clemson's been kind of trending as the top team, but the Huskers have been able to, in the past, really impact some of these recruits, on these visits. So what do you think is kind of, the hope for Nebraska this weekend? Can they put themselves, near the top or maybe, get past Clemson a little bit?
First, I don't know if it came out of nowhere because if you remember, Dylan Raiola in February posted on his Instagram story, he said, David Sanders, come link up or, DM me or whatever. And, we just took it as, a social media post trying to recruit. But I'm wondering if Raiola had something to do with it, not just obviously because he's a good quarterback, but if he's been actively recruiting Sanders behind the scenes and we just haven't heard about it. I would be fired up to land David Sanders. He is probably, he's a top player in the, 2025 class. He is such a skilled lineman. He is, very sound technically. He can both run and pass block pretty well. He's not afraid to, make lanes for the running backs. He's very aggressive. He extends his hands and immediately drives back his man. He's a very complete player. He's the type of player that you can build around in a class. And, I said this, I think a couple days ago on one of my other pages, just when you look at the level of recruiting that this offensive line unit has undergone just in the past year and a half, it's been remarkable. And a lot of that goes to Matt Rule. A lot of the credit goes there, but also a lot of the credit goes to Donovan Raiola. I wasn't exactly thrilled when he was hired back a couple of years ago, but at the same time, I think having a coach, again, that buys into your philosophy as an offensive line coach and who believes in the offensive line, that helps too. So Raiola deserves his flowers as well as Matt Rule and the rest of the coaching staff for sure.
Yeah, he's done a great job on the recruiting trail. Grant Bricks was a huge get. Preston Tamu. So they've landed a number of highly ranked guys. And David Sanders would be incredible. I want to look back at last year. Was it Brandon Brown was the big guy? I'm trying to think of his
Brandon
name.
Baker.
Yeah, Brandon Baker. I don't know where I was getting Brandon Brown from, but at any rate, this guy is similar like that, but he's even better. He's just such a smooth athlete. And that would be to have a pass blocker like him, solidify your tackle room. He's a guy that's going to be drafted in the first round. When he gets to the NFL. So, unless he runs into injuries or something like that. This is a guy who's probably going to play 3 years in college and boom, it's going to be a first round pick. He's just, he's got everything that you want in a tackle. And it is a big weekend for offensive tackles with Scholl coming as well. He's ranked very highly. He's 196th overall. So you've got the number 2 prospect, because David Sanders is the number 2 prospect in the entire 2025 class. Not only is he the number 1 offensive tackle, but he's the number 2 player in the entire class. And Broderick Scholl is number 196. The one thing is that they do have Sanders has crystal balls to Clemson. Scholl has crystal balls to Auburn, but that doesn't mean that Nebraska crystal balls aren't commitments. That's one thing I'm very fond of saying. Crystal balls aren't commitments, and if it was that far, he probably wouldn't even be taking this visit. So I think it's very telling that he's coming to Lincoln this weekend. It's too bad they couldn't get him on campus for the spring game, but that's still an exciting selling point. Like, look what we have in the future. Come be a part of it, because Nebraska is poised to win very big over the next few seasons, I believe.
I believe so as well, and we're probably going to regret saying this at the end of next season, but at the same time, it speaks
I can't do another losing season. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
I might.
I can't make it.
The show might end if we have another losing season. No, but anyway, when you've built the depth in the offensive line room like Nebraska has in the past couple, cycles, it also affords you the opportunity to take chances on some of these, highly touted, more skilled offensive linemen with, long offer sheets and, being recruited by big time schools. And if you miss, it's not as damaging because you don't need, as much help on the offensive line now that you already have the others in the fold as well.
Yeah, and I'm really excited, even just looking ahead to this season, how it's all going to play out. With Teddy Prohashka over there. I'm wondering if Turner Corcoran's going to be able to play this season or not. I mean, I don't want to say that they don't really need him, but I don't think that like it's a must that I don't think they have to like rush him back if he's not 100%
Well,
healthy. I
again,
think
it's
they
having
could,
the luxury of a deep offensive line room now.
yeah, and I think they could say, hey, like if you want a medical red shirt, you could have a spot, for next year or whatever, like kind of like the Rink Mass thing. But Ben Hurt, I feel really good about, and
Yep.
after another year, I mean, I think that he maybe could have, gone to the NFL this year. I know everybody talks about Gifford and some of those other guys, but I don't know that he would have been like an early round pick. I'm not saying that, but I think he would have got drafted. I think he played well enough last year to get drafted because he just has all the traits that you're looking for. If you were to build a right tackle like Bryce Benhart is what he would look like. He just did not. It was like he did not move very well his first 2 years. I don't know exactly why that was, but last year, they cut down some weight. They got rid of those stupid knee pads. I don't know what it was, but he just looked like a completely different player from the spring game on. Like when I saw him in last year's spring game, I was like, oh, this is a completely different dude. I mean, the way he was getting out of his stance, the way he was, firing off the ball. So maybe it took Donovan Raiola a little bit of time to teach the technique the way he wanted to. I'm not really sure exactly, but he's definitely proven that, he can develop these guys. I mean, Gunnar Gatula, looks like he's in a position to play. I was really impressed with him during the spring game. Justin Evan Jenkins has come along well. Henry Latoski.
He's been really good. Evans Jenkins, I really like him.
So, I mean, even if, if Micah Mazuka, or however you pronounce his last name, even if he's not ready to start or whatever, you've still got Latoski, Justin Jenkins. I mean, you've got a lot of, really solid players there. I'm trying to think, too, of the other Gibson Pyle. I think is going to be an absolute star at guard. I think this guy is just going to absolutely kill it. I have no doubt that he's going to be a future starter. And probably, frankly, I think he's going to be an all-conference player. I'm not saying like first team all-conference, but that guy's going to get some like honorable mention, third team, because he played tackle in high school. And I think he's one of those guys that like once you move him inside to guard, like he's just going to be a mauler. And so I could definitely see, a pairing of like Grant Bricks and Gibson Pyle and Preston Tamu on the right side in the future. I mean, there's a lot of you could even have potentially, if Gatula is good enough at tackle to the point where you're like, man, that's one of our 5 best players. You could have Bricks, Gatula, maybe move Tamu inside, and then have Pyle, and then Evan Jenkins or whoever your center is. I mean, you could have a pretty stacked offensive line here for Nebraska, well into the future.
And that's not including the walk-on like Alexander Ruggieri, however you pronounce his last name. We got to get better at pronouncing these names, man. We're gonna get in trouble one day, and somebody's gonna yell at us. But anyway, I mean,
they already do. They already do yell at us. But yeah, I'm a print journalist. I don't have to learn how to pronounce names. That's why I got into. Anyway, that's why I got into print journalism.
Mitch was on the same wavelength. I think. Even if you could, he was a walk-on, which we'll get into, I think, here in a little bit. But, even when you look at him and his technique, and especially where he played high school football at Bishop Gorman, I mean, that's a very well-run program. And so even the walk-on linemen have some, potential as well. So there is that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I did want to mention. I don't know if of you guys saw this. I did post about it on HuskerBigRed.com. But Ross Dellinger had an interesting report this week about walk-ons. And so basically, how there's this lawsuit going on, and part of the settlement for it is essentially the idea is going to be that each program has like a $20 million limit, or I'm not exactly sure how it works, but basically schools would be paying players directly, and they'd have like about $20 million to work with. I think they don't have to spend that if he doesn't want to. But yeah, no, and so with Ruggieri, I mean, when he came here, he committed as a preferred walk-on, and just like Vincent Genatoni did, he came here as a preferred walk-on, and yeah, this is what Mitch is talking about with and what Danny's talking about with Ruggieri is that basically he came and committed with the idea that he's gonna get a scholarship in the future, but he is coming here as a preferred walk-on, and Nebraska did that, with a few different guys, and they're essentially using NIL as a way to pay for their scholarship. So, they have enough money to pay for their tuition and yada, yada, yada. So they're not having to pay their way out of their own pocket like some of the walk-ons had to do back in the day. And but this idea with these new, like, paying everybody or whatever, is part of the discussion would be that every player on the roster is on scholarship. And so if that were to happen, it would essentially eliminate, walk-on players from the FBS level. If they reduce the scholarship down to 85 players or 95 players, is what they're talking about doing. That would make an impact on Nebraska, who I think has done as well with the walk-on program, even under Matt Rule and some of the other coaches, as any program in the country, at least any major program in the country.
Yeah, it would be definitely an interesting dynamic and an interesting shift. And, you mentioned, some of these walk-on guys, Brody Belt. I remember, I think Phelan Sanford was a walk-on, I believe, as well. And
I think Isaac Gifford was a walk-on.
Yep, Isaac Gifford. I mean, so Nebraska's done a good job of
both of the Bullock brothers. I mean, we have
yep.
two projected starters on the defense this year that were former walk-ons,
and they're both really good. So
yeah, so something interesting there.
So yeah, it definitely is interesting. But at the same time, and I've said this about NIL, and I've said this about paying players and things like that. Schools will figure out how to adapt to these things, and it's the ones that are willing to accept the changes and work with the changes and figure out even loopholes within the changes that will be the most successful. And I think this coaching staff and Matt Rule and, the athletic department as a whole, is in a good position to kind of, do that and be ahead of the curve, while some other programs may struggle and complain like Nick Saban,
Yeah. Nick Saban, man, what a client. And then, he's talking about how, what did he say on the NFL draft about? It was one of the players was like one of our the kid from Toledo, the Toledo cornerback. He's like, he was one of the top guys we were trying to get out of the transfer portal. He was never in the transfer portal, so he literally, like, on air was talking about how he's tampering with players on other rosters. Yeah. Like, Nick Saban, you were the problem with college football. Yeah. You literally embody, like, the cheater dumping bags on people's doorsteps. Like, Tennessee got caught, but Nick Saban is like one of the biggest bag droppers in college football history. And that's part of the reason he won so many national championships. So get off my lawn with your, sainty, whatever, your Saint Nick act. Like, it's just such crap.
It's the type of thing.
I mean, not to be violent, but I just want to smack him. Like, it's like, come on, man. Everybody knows you're just talking out your ass right now.
Well, it's the classic, like, old retired person is bored and has nothing to do, so they just start making up shit to keep themselves entertained. And it's interesting. Then you have, like, the Brian Kellys of the world who refuse to use NIL, and it's like, all right, Brian Kelly, you suck. When you have good players, now you're not gonna use NIL, and you're gonna have trouble, getting people to your school, and you're gonna still suck without it. So why wouldn't you not use NIL? Like, this is stupid. Like, what are we doing here?
See, I don't know, because they had the number one quarterback in the 2025 class, Bryce Underwood, and, like, Michigan was in that recruitment. And I know for a fact that they gave him a massive NIL. So he's totally just lying. He's just lying. LSU is one of the biggest NIL buyers in the market. So it's like, for you to go up there and complain about, like, that just shows you how broken this system is even the guys that are cheating, that aren't breaking the rules, are like, this system's the worst. We got to get away with this. Like, they're the ones paying players, and they're like, we got to stop getting play, because they were, like, probably running out of money. They probably spent all their money on that quarterback, and now they need defensive line help. And they're like, oh man, we used all our collective on a 17-year-old quarterback who's not going to be here for 2 years.
which I wonder, if situations like that will change the NIL game moving forward. But I don't know. He's a shame. Brian Kelly, I don't know where his southern accent came from, but he's from Everett, Massachusetts, about an hour away from me. So he's just a snake in the grass. He's always been. I mean, he's no southern boy, and I can't stand Brian Kelly. Like, if there's one coach I can't stand, it's Brian Kelly.
I can't stand people trying to be fake, even when he was trying to, like, do those dance moves or whatever. It's like, Can you just try for, like, 5 minutes to be yourself? You'd probably be amazed at, like, the results that you would get, unless you're just, like, if you hate yourself that much, you can't even, like, be who you are. Like, that's not cool, Brian Kelly. I feel sorry for you.
Yeah, he's definitely changed from the Everett Mass guy to some big kind of persona or whatever, but anyway, that's my Brian Kelly rant on this Nebraska chat for the day.
So, like Mitch says, it's like in Monopoly when you put all your hotels on one color property, don't develop anything else and hope for the best. Like, it's kind of, there's only so much collective money going around. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. But it is disappointing because I felt like Nebraska did kind of have an advantage there where they kind of figured out a way to use NIL in a bit of a different way that was kind of smart to get players that are like scholarship level, but they didn't have the scholarships for, because they did that with multiple guys. And I thought that was a pretty smart way to, keep at, if you're building up the, people always think about like, hey, let's add these 5 stars in like the top part of your roster. And that's great. Like, it's awesome to have that, but you want to build up the bottom part of your roster too. And if you can increase the floor of your team by adding, and improving the talent on the back end of the roster, the bottom part, the 80 to 85, like, I think that's a really good idea too. And I think that's what Matt Rule and Nebraska have done a really good job of, is instead of like getting those guys who are traditional walk-ons, like Ruggeroli had legitimate offers to a bunch of Power 5 schools. So that was a big time commitment. To get him on a preferred walk-on for a year, was huge. And there was some other guys too. I can't remember exactly which ones, but, guys that in the past would not have been coming to Nebraska, if it wasn't for the NIL kind of walk-on thing.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see the shift in that and how that impacts Nebraska in terms of not talent, but maybe numbers, because I think Nebraska is going to have a lot of talent coming in here very, very soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you would probably see is some of these, in-state kids that, are going to Nebraska. I mean, like Isaac Dickey is a name that comes to mind. They may have to take the FCS offers that are coming their way, but, if that's the way this works out. So hopefully it doesn't go that way, because I do think that, players are gonna miss out too. They're obviously they're passing on a scholarship to try to go to Nebraska for a reason. And many of those guys, Nebraska's not the only place, but many of those guys do end up earning a scholarship and earning their way onto the team or in the starting lineup. So it would be kind of sad to see, players like that, miss the opportunity to kind of bet on themselves. And we've seen there's just been so many examples over the years with Nebraska. I mean, I can't even name them. I mean, it would literally take up the entire show to name all the walk-ons that Nebraska's had, not just make the team, but start and play key roles.
Yeah. And it would be really unfortunate. I mean, I think when you look at the diamond in the rough type of players, and those are the players where if you develop them, they've been counted out, they haven't gotten a scholarship, and so they have a lot of motivation too and a little bit more drive to succeed. And I'm not saying that the players who are on scholarship don't, but it's always interesting to hear their backstories and where they came from, and they kind of have that underdog mentality. Like, I remember talking to Isaac Dickey, and he was just so excited to be a part of the program, and he was working really hard in the weight room, and he was grateful for the interview that he had with us. And they kind of have a little bit, I'm not going to say even a little bit more, but they have that humility too, because they're just grateful to have the opportunity to play and be a part of the program.
And it just means something more to them.
Yeah,
it means
right.
Being a Nebraska, player means more to people from Nebraska. It just does, or if you have a tie to the program. So, I think that, yeah, we would lose a little something if they get away from the walk-ons, but it is what it is. At some point, some things kind of go by the wayside with the money of it. So I don't know. We'll see what happens on that front, but I do think it would be, at least give them like the 10, keep it at like 100. I mean, I can understand, dropping it a little bit, but make it like 100 scholarships and whatever. But I guess the reason they don't want to do that then is because it's a whole Title IX issue, and that's going to start changing too. Whereas like it's going to have an impact on some sports, so it's going to be really interesting, like in baseball, because right now the rule with baseball, I think, is you get like 11 some scholarships where you can spread out over, however many players you have, 30 players or whatever your roster is. So there's not that many baseball players that are like on a full scholarship, but in the future, you're going to be able to, that restriction is going to be gone. So if Nebraska wanted to have 30 full ride scholarship baseball players, it could. And so I think the schools that are obviously going to want to invest in that are going to obviously do better in recruiting, most likely. So that I think is going to be interesting to see on some of those minor sports, like baseball, maybe wrestling. I'm not sure if they work that same way, but it's going to see who, really wants to invest and win. And a place like Nebraska where look at our facilities, look at all the infrastructure that we have. I'm sure that they will not balk at, extra scholarship.
You see the new walkout tunnel that they're building?
It's insane.
Like, damn.
We have some of the best facilities in the country. Matt Rule is not wrong when he talks about how great the facilities are. I like one of my favorite comments when he was talking about, doing his interview kind of tour after he first got hired. He's like, yeah, my wife, I took her on the tour of the building and she's like, yeah, man, if you don't win here, there's something wrong with you.
One of my favorite things about the new facility was seeing the old pictures of the groundbreaking of the facility with Wan'Dale Robinson speaking and Scott Frost standing in the background behind him. That was in 2019. So it's been a long time coming.
Life comes at you fast, I guess.
It
I
does.
wonder
I was
when
just
Scott's
watching.
going to get his opportunity to coach again. I know that he had that post and then he was like thinking about it, but
Yeah.
I wonder when that opportunity is going to come. Is he going to have to go to the UFL or something, or one of these, weird like Mike Riley? I'm not sure who's going to give Scott that opportunity.
Reunite with Adrian Martinez.
That would be. I'd have to watch that team. I'd have to.
I would like, because you look at what he's doing in the UFL, and granted, it's the UFL, but like he's absolutely dominating. I would kind of feel bad for him.
Yeah, and I have to say I am impressed with the UFL, and I think just the way that they merged the leagues together. It is a pretty quality league for the spring. I have to say I've watched some of it, and it hasn't been bad. And I even saw there was like a commercial for Adrian's team is playing another team that has only one loss, and his team is undefeated. So I was like, I might actually even watch that if I get a chance today. I should be watching Nebraska in the Big Ten Women's Softball Championship game. I should, but I won't be because they lost. So maybe I'll be filling that time with my Adrian Martinez, and I can maybe picture him in a Nebraska uniform and think about what could have been.
I was watching the 2019 game against Illinois the other day under the lights when he ran off that 44-yard run. Man, like that was the year that like that first stretch of games, I thought he was a Heisman contender, and then the wheels just fell off the wagon. But that Illinois game, I remember it took so long. I think Wan'Dale Robinson won Big Ten Freshman of the Week that week. So it's just crazy. Like when you look back, it seems like it's been like decades, but it's really only been 5 years.
I remember the first game against Colorado, which may have been. I'm trying to think if that was one of the first games of the Frost era. I think it was the first
2018 or 2019.
2018, the very first one, and it was Adrian's first start. And I remember he had he ripped off like a long touchdown run, and I just remember thinking like, man, we're back. And then of course he got hurt, and then the whole season fell apart because the guy that was competing against him transferred, which I think was Noah Vedral or whatever. So he probably wouldn't have been that great. But at any rate, just it never materialized. And then I remember the next year, 2019.
That was my first year,
yeah. Went into Colorado, and I want to say, was it Maurice Washington had like a really long play, and we had like a 17-point lead, and I'm like, we're back. And then of course we lost that game too. So
Steven Montez played well for Colorado in that game, and we just ran out of gas. I remember, not to like go down this hill again because it feels like that's all we do, but literally that's all the highlights we have is us losing.
Yeah, like I sometimes think about, I'm like, did we, for all the success that we had during the Osborne era, which you didn't even get to enjoy, Danny?
No.
It's like, did we just have to like sell our soul to the like the devil of sports? You know what I mean? Like the sports juju, and they're just like, well, you got all those championships, so now you will suffer for like the next 20 years. So I'm like, is that suffering ending now? Because it's been happening for quite a long time. So, I would really appreciate if just like the curse would end, because I just constantly, like last night, I even wanted to tweet the Michael Scott, like, we're cursed, that's just how I feel every time Nebraska loses. I'm like Michael Scott and the Meredith gets hit with the car episode, and I'm like, we are cursed.
Well, it's not even that too. It's like I saw Luke McCaffrey drafted by the Commanders, Wan'Dale Robinson's with the Giants. It's like Luke McCaffrey's with the Commanders as a receiver. Like,
I know, man. He was at like 1,000-yard season.
What a waste by Scott Frost, honestly, and his staff. Greg Austin too. I know Scott Frost gets a lot of blame, but Greg Austin was just as bad. I think Frost lands in a premium position. I tend to agree only because he is a damn good offensive coordinator. He's just not a good head coach. It's like Rex Ryan. I thought Rex Ryan was a damn good defensive coordinator, but he was just not head coach material, and some coaches are like that,
And maybe, you never know. I mean, some coaches do really bad in their first, instance, and then come back the second time and learn from it. So, I mean, maybe he could do, the Belichick where he wasn't great with the Browns and then he turned it around. Although he did get the Browns at least to the playoffs. So I mean, it wasn't
With
he
Nick
kind of had
Saban
an
on the
aging
staff.
roster. Yeah, and I'm trying to think who his quarterback was. He got rid of Bernie though, so.
Yeah.
But I can remember that team. They had they had Derek Alexander, a Michigan guy on that team, and I remember them losing to the Steelers. It's like so crazy back in my mind because I used to watch I was so obsessed with like the NFL. I literally watched. I mean, I still do watch like every playoff game, but like I was obsessed with like I wouldn't miss a play of any playoff game. Whereas now I'm like, oh, I like if it's not my team, I'm like, oh, here's the championship game, and I might be like doing some other things, but like so I don't know. At any rate, long story short, but maybe he could have a second act somewhere. I feel like he could get himself back in as like an analyst. I feel like that would be like a cushy, like non-pressure job to just like be on the background, and then maybe he could work his way into like quarterbacks coach, OC, co-OC.
Yeah.
But the other thing he could do is like go. I mean, he could really bet on himself and say like, hey, I deserve to be a head coach, and like go be a head coach at an FCS school or something. Like Bo Pelini did that with Youngstown State.
And I think he did pretty well.
Yeah, he got him to like the national championship game. I'm pretty sure they got close to that level. They didn't win it, and I'm not sure. I think he got fired, so I'm not sure exactly like what happened there. But how Bo I think just rubs people the wrong way after a while. So I think
isn't he on the college football playoff committee now? Bo?
No, that's Mike Riley. That's Mike
Okay.
Riley. I wish Bo Pelini was on the college football playoff committee. How great would that be? Just like like I can imagine like somebody disagrees with him and he just like throws the water pitcher against the wall. he just has no chill. So
he has a spirit about him.
I wonder if he'd bring the cat. The Bo Pelini. That's the one thing I miss about the Bo Pelini era is the faux Pelini cat. And then when he brought the cat out for the spring game that one time, that was pretty. I have a special place in my heart for Bo Pelini. I know he ripped the fan base, but you know what? We are a little spoiled at times. So
Nebraska is a pressure cooker, and I think that's probably the reason that Frost, say what you want about his drinking and whatever, but Nebraska is a pressure cooker. And honestly, if I was the favorite son at Nebraska and I got the head coaching job, I probably wouldn't do my job very well either. Like I literally run the state.
And I think he was a victim, of his own success, I think, because he really landed in a great spot at UCF where like George O'Leary was the coach, and there was a lot of stuff there. And so, I mean, his offense definitely helped. His ideas offensively helped, but he had the
great
dudes there already.
Mind. I will always, whatever people think of him, I'll always say that he's a really good offensive mind.
Yeah, I mean, the offense wasn't. I mean, we scored points when he was here, just not when we needed to. I mean, it's the pieces just never came together. Like the 2021 team, even the 2020 team.
Don't even talk about the 2021 team. I still have nightmares about that team.
That was the horrible. But I mean, they had the pieces. They just, I'll never forget when I really knew it wasn't going to work was that Michigan game. I have to say it was the Michigan game. Yeah, and then
when we held Kenneth Walker to like 85 yards, and then the punt return on the right side.
No, it wasn't even that one. It was the one they lost to Michigan at home, the Wolverines. When Adrian Martinez, when we were driving down to it was tied, and he fumbled that one, and we were driving down for the win, and then we even had a chance to tie. I think we were down by 3 and had a chance to tie, and he like overthrew a wide open receiver and he got picked. And I remember Scott doing that thing where like with his lips, just the look on his face, like. It was like, what am I supposed to do here? I put my team in a position to win and I mean, your players still have to execute, but I mean, it just was one of those things that's not going to work out, but maybe something will for him. And I do hope that he has success because, for all his failures as the head coach, he'll always be, one of my favorite players. He helped this team win a national championship and I will never forget that. I will never, I'll never take that for granted, I guess. I will always be appreciative of those efforts and the great memories that he gave me. So even though he was a terrible head coach, I'll say probably the worst in program history, I still wish him the best in the future. And I do hope that
that Michigan State game was the one that did it for me.
Bad.
The bad kickoff coverage on the left side, and he went to the right, and it was all over.
Yeah, or the guy punted it to the wrong side of the field, and there was
That's what it was,
you
yeah.
know, just like, come on, man.
Because we held Kenneth Walker to under 100 that game, and our
And
defense
I'm
played really well.
and I'm pretty sure that was kicked to my Green Bay Packers guy, Jaden Reed. And it was
was.
like it was
It
like a
was.
straight, it was like 100-yard sprint right to the end zone. There was like nobody there. That was probably the easiest touchdown he's ever had his entire life.
And I'll always say this, that if Frost fired Shenander a little bit earlier in his tenure, then he might have still been the head coach. I don't know. But Shenander didn't do him any favors at all.
And that showed that, like, you know, they fired him and put in Bill Bush, and he had him playing like a top 30 defense. I mean, Bill Bush had that defense playing really well in 2022. And like, I'm surprised he didn't get more you know, coaching opportunities, but it seems like he's pretty happy doing what he's doing right now.
And he's
so.
older too. The league wants younger coaches, unfortunately, now.
Yeah. And man, if you could just sit there and be on the radio and not have to do the grind of, because college coaching is a grind. I mean, that's why so many of these guys want to go to the NFL, especially the position coaches. Because, like, man, if you don't have to recruit 12 months out of the year and you only have to show up for, you know, like from the end of your season, whether that's January or February till basically May, you're like a part-time worker. And in college football, you are lucky if you get like 1 week off, you know, after spring ball, because you got your recruiting, and it's just it's a tough position. So I can understand why there's so many guys. And then that's the other thing, is you put in all that work to recruit these guys and get them there, and then they could leave anytime. So I do hope with all this money that there needs to be some accountability, you know, if in terms of contracts. I mean, so like if Nebraska's giving Dylan Raiola $3 million, or, you know, I'm just throwing out a random number, but there needs to be some type of year commitment, like a contract saying, hey,
there needs to be contracts. Yeah, there needs to be contracts. This is no longer, you know, amateur athletics school first. This is now a business.
Yeah.
There needs to be contracts.
Yeah, and that'll be crazy. But I mean, like we've said before, you can't have this, you know, free agency frenzy where, you know, like imagine this, where in the NFL, if you could pay people but you didn't have contracts, I mean, Jerry Jones would be writing. I mean, he literally would be paying Patrick Mahomes like $300 million. I'm not kidding. I think he would pay him. Yeah. I think he would pay him $300 million for like one season to come to Dallas, because it would be worth it. It would be worth it to him, not only to win a Super Bowl, but I mean, he's already paying
Dak Prescott anymore.
Yeah, he's already paying. I mean, he's already paying Dak Prescott $50 million. I mean, maybe $300 million is too much, but he would definitely.
Jones would be out in New York in a heartbeat.
God. Yeah. How many teams last year would, instead of drafting, you know, instead of like having to draft a quarterback, they'd probably be like, oh, let's just see if we can pay Jordan Love like $70 million, get him from the Packers.
Bill would have still stuck with Mac last year, but I mean,
yeah, Bill would have been the anti. I shouldn't say that, because they've done some big free agency spendings, but
on defense.
On defense, yeah, not on quarterback.
Not the entire offensive side of the ball is neglected. So,
yep, except for the time they got Wes Welker with the
and Randy Moss in a trade.
Yeah, that was a good trade. That trade pissed off Brett Favre to no end. But
that was when Bill still had the acumen to be a solid general manager.
Yep, you know, I mean, he had some solid. I think he had some solid players. He just he messed up at the quarterback position, and he should have stopped. The one mistake that I think that he made was that he commissioned that study about, you know, Tom Brady and aging quarterbacks or whatever, and he failed to realize that Tom Brady doesn't apply to any standard that we've ever seen in football. He could still be playing to this day, I believe.
On his roast the other day, he looked like 25 years old.
I mean, I'm not saying he'd be one of the best players in the league, but he's good enough to be an NFL starting quarterback today. He could still be playing he probably, you know what, if Bill Belichick hadn't pulled what he pulled, him and Tom Brady would probably still be there right now. But he had to draft Garoppolo, and then he got pissed when Kraft did the right thing and made him trade him. And like, I get drafting Jimmy, like I get having a quarterback in waiting, like a true backup, a quality backup, but like it just felt like that Bill wanted him to succeed, because Bill had this like ego thing that he wanted to be able to win without Tom Brady. And he should have realized that Tom Brady was his golden goose, and he should have hitched his wagon to him, and he, you know, hitched his thing to Tom Brady and rode Tom Brady until he literally could not walk onto the field anymore. Like that's the biggest mistake and I'm sure if you asked him that, he probably would go back on that decision, you know, because Bill's not an idiot. Like he knows he messed up, and I think he's definitely, like I would love for him to like actually write a book about his coaching career and truly go into some of those things. And kind of my favorite comment he made was about like the Netflix thing. He's like,
Yeah.
not to be confused with the Bill Belichick roast that was the Apple Plus.
Robert Kraft is not innocent in any of this either. I mean,
No,
that
he's not.
documentary is just terrible. And granted, I'm sure Bill did have a lot of bad things, and I don't think, but Kraft is not the innocent that he's trying to, portray himself
Well,
to
and
be.
what really sucked is they, I mean, I do agree with Kraft in a sense that like he gave these people the kind of creative leeway to do it. I think that they, did probably, I mean, once you get creative, kind of control of a project, you're not going to cede to the owner or whoever. So I think they were like, yeah, we're not going to do this exactly how you want us to either. But the fact that they skated over the 03 and 04
Yep,
championships, the first
those are massive.
dynasty, and the way that Bill and those guys like beat up on Peyton Manning, like that was a core part of the Patriots dynasty, and they skipped over all of it. So
And just the fact that it was made by Kraft Productions doesn't give you any benefit of the doubt either.
no, I mean he definitely was trying to make himself look good in it, and I'm not sure if it achieved what he wanted it to achieve, but
Mitch
at
trying
any
to get
rate,
us back on track here. I wonder if
yeah, I
Bush
know.
gets a look to replace when comes our OC. If you have talent in the, I'd want somebody younger. I think that Bill Bush still has a good football mind, but I would honestly want somebody younger, and that's no diss necessarily to Bill Bush. I just think, if you're looking to become a coaching development school and you want to gain a reputation as a landing spot to some bigger jobs, I would want somebody a little bit younger. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if Bill Bush came back at all, but just the way the game is kind of trending, I would want a younger defense coordinator.
Well, I think Mitch is saying that if Dvorak becomes
Okay,
DC and
LB.
he would
Okay.
become LB coach,
Oh, I
but
see what you're saying. I misread it.
I think the point still stands though. I
Yeah.
don't think you want, I mean, maybe if you couldn't find somebody else, but I just think that you want that guy to be, you want like hardcore recruiters. I'm trying to think of a better word, but and that's just, to me, that's just not Bill Bush anymore. He's an older guy.
Full-time recruiters, I'll
You
say,
know,
because it is
I
full-time now.
Yeah, but I want like a Garrett McGuire on defense type. I want somebody that's young and hungry, going to prove themselves, connect with these guys, and I just don't see that being Bill Bush. And with Matt Rule's background in the NFL coaching, especially too, like I feel like the Nebraska could get some guys with ties to the league that would be younger and just he could always come back as an analyst. I think Bill would be a great analyst, maybe even
Yeah.
special teams coach. I think he could do that again. But to be honest, when I listen to him on the radio, I think he is very happy doing what he's doing. So I'd be surprised if he wanted to get, because I'm sure he had opportunities. I just
Yeah.
don't think, I think he's happy doing what he's doing. Not to speak for him, but
And I'm happy McGuire. I don't know if I said this already. I might have, but I'm happy McGuire was in Texas yesterday trying to find a new quarterback of the future, which I think is the Vandenbosch kid.
I don't know. He's in the same class as Raiola though. So that's where the class is going to be really interesting because you got Dayton Raiola and then the other kid, there's some kids, I think his name's Thomas Sill. Don't quote me on that, but there's a Elite 11 or a kid from Nebraska that just did really well in Elite 11 in the 2026 class. So yeah, and then they just offered another kid in 2026. They've offered like 13 quarterbacks already, but
Which
I
I
would
have
still
no
keep.
problem with at all, because you want to have too many options than not enough. We've seen not enough, and the not enough became a wide receiver. So there you go.
Yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
it's good to cast a wide net, but I think it's going to depend a lot too, because I mean Dayton Raiola hasn't really become a starter yet. I think the idea is for him to hopefully become the starter, at Buford this year, and if he does that, I mean, and plays well at Buford, then I think his talent's going to go up or his ranking's going to go up, and then so I think teams are kind of still waiting to see on the what he's going to do, and it's probably still somewhat early to determine like who the top target's going to be. So it'll be interesting to see how Nebraska does, kind of go with that. But right now, at least, Dayton Raiola isn't ranked, and outside of Nebraska, the only other offers he has are Charlotte and App State. So I think teams and schools are really kind of waiting and seeing what he does, at Buford this year.
Yeah, and Buford's a quality program. We've recruited a lot of kids out of Buford, and
That might be the best program in the country. It's one of them. That's one of
yeah.
the best ones. If you get a kid from Buford, that's a good player usually.
Gabe Irvin, I mean, even with his injuries and stuff, he was a good player, I thought.
There was some chatter that Gabe Ervin almost transferred. Sean Callahan posted that on one of the message boards, so I thought that was kind of
Transferred,
interesting.
like within the
This
last couple months.
spring,
Thought about
yeah,
transferring.
he was debating going into the portal this spring.
I
So.
honestly would have been shocked, and I'm shocked Ramir is still here. Honestly, I'm surprised he's still here too. So,
But when the thing about Ramirez is like he hasn't played in such a long time, and they're getting the NIL and the base salary. So I think Nebraska's kind of taking care of him in that regard. So I mean,
I really hope he plays this year. Like, I feel like he's been so underutilized throughout his entire career.
yeah, and it would be nice to have him. I just remember that kickoff return he had against Minnesota, and I thought like, man, they've at least found a way for him to get the ball, and then he got hurt. So
Or the game
really
against
hurt.
Michigan back in 2021, and unfortunately, I also remember the drop pass against Illinois in 2022. So,
Yeah, Rule mentioned that Michigan game and where he had all the, like 150 total yards.
he was
or
good
whatever,
that game.
so.
That's when I thought he like kind of put everything together.
That whole season, he ran the ball pretty well in 2021, and he got quite a few carries. I always thought he should have got more, but yeah, I think that he has a really good opportunity to, at least, especially as that third down back. And I've said it before, but he's a guy he can pass pro, and that's going to be important with Dylan Raiola, because the thing about it is, like, yeah, Emmett Johnson and Dante Dowdell, like maybe they're the best runners, but this is gonna be a pass offense too. And if you're not going to be able to pass protect, then I'm sorry, you're not going to play that much. Like you can't have a guy. You can't put somebody in there and be that big of a tip off, like, oh, we're going to take out, Dante Dowdell every time because he's not a great pass protector. I'm not saying that's the case, just as an example. That's just too big of a tip off to the defense. So, if you have a guy who can you have to be able to do all of those things. And maybe last year, like, pass protection for running backs wasn't as big a deal because we weren't really a drop back shotgun pass type of team.
Football, like
But like last year, every pass was like probably a play action pass. A lot of them, not everyone, but so yeah, I think that pass protection and who can do it is going to be really impactful this year. And Mitch says Ramir will be our screen pass guy, and we're going to do that a lot this year. He's going to have more receiving yards than rushing. I thought that he would last year too, to be honest. So hopefully that proves to be the case. And yeah, same thing there. I just think he becomes a weapon. He can do the chip and drop out. It just it really helps your quarterback, especially a young quarterback too, to have a guy like that he can dump the ball to in space. And I think that Dylan especially is one of the things he's good at. Is he doesn't good quarterbacks realize that you don't have to skin the cat in one play. You know what I mean? Like you can, if you have a guy that's open for 2 or 3 yards, just get him the ball. Take the positive yards. And I think Dylan gets that really well. At least I got that from the spring. I mean, he knows when to take his shots. He sees the field so well that when he has the opportunities down the field, he's not afraid to take the chances. But he also can see like, hey, that's not there, and he doesn't force it. He's willing to take the 2, 3, 4 yard check down, and as long as the ball's moving forward, that's always a good thing. And I think that's a sign of a good, mature quarterback.
For sure, and we even saw it in the Polynesian Bowl in January too. He didn't make any crazy throws. He just gave the made the throws that were given to him, and it ended up in positive yardage. And it's been a while since we've had a quarterback that's been able to do that.
Yeah, and it's I mean, when the quarterback's playing really good, it almost looks like a point guard, just like getting the ball out to the playmakers, and this team has them. So yeah, that's right. Yeah, 13 Mitch with a good point, but 13 receivers on 16 completions in the spring game. That was probably the most impressive thing. It wasn't like he was just throwing it to one guy. I mean, he threw it to a bunch of different players, and you can't defend a quarterback like that. If you have somebody like, that's what made my Green Bay Packers so tough to defend last year, is because you had 5 wide receivers who they didn't have a true number one, but they were all they could all be the number one. And I feel like that's what Nebraska has with Banks and Nayor, Lloyd, Malachi Coleman. I know everybody's like on the Ja'Cory Barney train, and I am too, but I'm still not convinced he's going to be above Malachi Coleman on the depth chart. I think they're all going to be in that same. Those top 5 guys, I think, are going to get the majority of the targets. And
the thing with Malachi is his health. That's the only way I could see, Barney.
Yeah, if he's not, I think he will be, though. I think that's part of the reason. He did some stuff in the spring. There's no point in pushing him there, but But that dude is as good an athlete as we have on this entire team. In the entire Nebraska football program, Malachi Coleman is as good an athlete as we have. And he made some plays last year. And I think with a legitimate quarterback that can get him the football, like he would have made more plays last year if he had a better quarterback. And so I'm really excited to see, what he does. And I think too, like Jalen Lloyd in that slot, it's easier to kind of get those guys open, where Malachi Coleman like just needs somebody who can throw the football to him in some of those contested plays and, deep down the field. And we just didn't have a quarterback who could make those throws last year. And now we do. And so I think it's going to be really tough with all of those guys to stop them, especially when you have Dylan, who's so good at seeing the field.
Yeah. And, I think that when you have a good offensive line and good pass protection, that'll help too. And, I think it started really last year. I noticed improvement in the line, especially in pass protection. And, I think, the combination of everything, what can you do to help your quarterback succeed? Surround him with good wide receiving talent, get talent on the line, and put him in a position to, play at a high level.
Mitch here, and then we'll start wrapping up here shortly, guys. If you have any other comments, throw them in here in the chat. But Mitch says, I think the receivers are finally learning to run routes the right way at 100%. Sprint outs, the ball is going to be placed out in front. They won't have to play a game of Russian roulette in their heads about where the ball might possibly be thrown. So, yeah,
I agree.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
And,
just, if you're open, like you might see the football, whether you're the primary option or the number 4, like you better run your route and you better be ready, because if you are slightly open, like Dylan Raiola is going to put the ball on you. And that's what I think is going to make this offense fun. And, you might see a day where, Jalen Lloyd or Ja'Cory Barney or Isaiah, you might see days where they have 0-1 receptions. And, it might be a Jalen Lloyd day where he goes off for 9 for 200. I think you're going to see different guys, ruling the day, so to speak, not to make a play on that rule's name, but you know what? I like it. So I do think that's going to be a phenomenon where like 1 week it's Jalen Lloyd, the next week it's Nair, the next week it's Coleman, the next week it's Barney. And just think about how difficult that is for a defense. You show up to a room and you're like, who do we stop here? Who do we prioritize? Because if they're putting 4 receivers on the field, like you're going to have to put somebody on Malachi Coleman or somebody on Jalen Lloyd, and whoever is that mismatch, I think Dylan Raiola is going to be really good at exploiting it.
And then 2 years from now, it's going to be Michael Terry and Cortez Mills.
With Davon Hall and Isaiah McMorris. And
let's speak it into existence. If they could get both Mills and Terry, I would be thrilled. I mean, Terry doesn't make a video like that without at least putting, Nebraska, top focus in his recruitment.
And yeah, he's a Texas kid, but Nebraska's got plenty of Texas kids. I think that helps Nebraska. I definitely think they have a much better chance with Terry than Mills, but I do think that it was smart to get Cortez Mills on campus for the spring game. I said it at the time, but get an explosive playmaker, there to watch the offense look explosive, and that will help you. And I think that it has. I don't know how much.
Quite honestly, I wouldn't be upset if we lost out on Cortez Mills, because he's just so good. It's going to be a high recruitment regardless. You know what I mean? Like I would love to have him, but I'm not going to be, oh man, we lost Cortez Mills. We should have landed that. I mean, I'm just happy we're in the discussion. He is a baller.
And Mitch makes a good point. The running game will be, more wide open too.
Mm-hmm.
There won't be as many 8-man boxes because, Nebraska was just constantly 8-man box last year because what were they going to do with Heinrich Haarberg? You knew they were going to run it. You knew they were limited throwing the football. Whereas now, if teams want to come out with an 8-man box, okay, we'll throw the football deep. We'll take 2 or 3 deep shots, and that'll get you out of that real quick. So it's all about complementary football and having an offense too that can actually, take care of it and not put the defense in bad positions. And that's a huge part of it too, because how many times was for all the turnovers that they gave up, the defense actually did an incredible job of limiting points last year. And I don't think that gets talked about enough, where they got put in just the worst positions possible and they would still find a way to get stops. It was incredible. And it's like
they were busting their asses off and we gave them nothing to show for it a lot of times.
Just play some complimentary football and not kill the defense with terrible special teams and terrible quarterback play.
That's the other thing too. With a good offense, you'll be able to give them breaks and you'll be able to make them feel more confident because they know their stops will mean that much more. I mean, there were some games I felt so bad for them. I mean, they were playing hard, and I think you know, it was talked about a lot at the time, but one of the biggest offseason moves was keeping Tony White. And, you know, I think, you know, Tony White, you know, bringing him back, adding Glenn Thomas, I think for as much as we did well in recruiting this offseason, I think the coaching retainment as well as the addition in Thomas was also huge, you know, heading into next season.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, those were you know, really big pickups. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about with this Nebraska football team going forward. So we better wrap it up there before the old computer battery dies. And Ben got some stuff to get to anyways. I got to go watch some high school tennis here. So that's
Okay.
what's on tap for my day. You can sense
How do
my
you cover
excitement, I'm
tennis?
sure.
How do you cover tennis? Is it like, I don't know how to write about tennis.
I don't know either, so maybe I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll figure it out someday. I usually just try to pick a kid that's good and then kind of make the story about them. But yeah, tennis, it's not the best. It's not my favorite. I'll just say
Maybe
that.
a personal profile with some tennis highlights sprinkled
Yeah,
in.
exactly. There's high school tennis in Montana. There's not many of those. I'll just say that. Hopefully none of my local followers see that. But at any rate, thanks again for joining us for another chat, you guys. It was a lot of fun. We'll be back on Monday morning to you know, talk more Nebraska Cornhuskers. So
maybe some recruiting news come Monday.
Yeah, maybe have some recruiting news. Yeah, we'll wrap up this weekend. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge favor to us. Hit the like button. Drop in any comments that you have. And have a great weekend. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.